Child trauma is my story. The abuse and traumas I experienced as a child didn't come from just one incident or two. They came from many. From many sides for many years, age 2 through high school. And I did what a lot of abused and traumatized children do. I minimized it, blamed myself for it, and I seemed to work tirelessly on trying to get those that hurt and abused me to love and accept me. From the outside, I appeared to be a respected and successful adult. But on the inside, I lived day by day like a fearful, frightened child. And no matter what he did, no matter what he accomplished, never seemed to believe that he was enough. I struggled most days of my life in one way or another, and yet, strangely, I never seemed to be able to connect it to the abuse I suffered as a child. Now, I think it's important to mention that as a minister, I did everything that I was taught to do and everything that I taught others to do to be healed from my childhood. I really did come to the place of believing that I was healed from my childhood. So what was I missing? I believe what I was missing was what Dr. Levine discovered about trauma, that it was encoded in my brain and in my body when I was a boy. Now, Dr. Levine discovered other things about trauma as well, like major characteristics of trauma. Some of them being the constant need for reassurance, helplessness, and even rage. Hurting myself, that came easy to me because I was brought up to believe that I deserved to be punished. And from that thinking, the self-destruction began. In 2009, I had a breakdown that resulted in full-blown post-traumatic stress disorder. It was so severe that I had to be hospitalized. And during my time in the hospital, it was as though several of those compartments that had been kept under lock and key since I was a boy were suddenly reopened. As memory after memory of some of the traumas I experienced resurfaced. Even when I was released from the hospital, my mind was still so unstable. I remember having to set a timer to remind myself to eat. I'm now going to read to you a short excerpt from my autobiography, Thorns of Chester Street. In a single night, the twisted culmination of all my childhood fears was magnified tenfold when I heard the blood-curdling screams of my mother and sister end with gunfire. I instantly jumped out of bed knowing that I only had seconds before my stepfather Jed got to me. The pounding of my heart was nearly as loud as the screams of my mother and sister. Should I hide, I wondered? No, Jed would find me for sure. I realized my hurried escape from this madman was all in vain when once again I heard the gut-wrenching sound of gunfire. My lifeless body tumbled to the bottom of the stairs. Suddenly, my eyes flew open and I sat straight up in bed. "You're okay, Shawn," I said out loud, calming myself, as I had to do night after night from this hellish, recurring nightmare. It was only a few months after I started working with my new therapist that I shared with her this recurring nightmare that I just read to you, along with a few others that had tormented me throughout so much of my life. One particular time after I shared one of these with her, she leaned forward in her chair and softly said, "Shawn, the monsters in your nightmares were not just the byproduct of a creative child's vivid imagination. The monsters in your nightmares were real. They were the adults in your life." And I guess I felt relieved because I felt heard and believed. So this is what I started to learn as I was working with my therapist. I started to understand that there were things about myself, challenges that I lived with on a day-to-day basis that made life really hard, that were actually characteristics of trauma. And I had only associated these things with just being me, which only led to a belief system that I just wasn't enough. Like how my mind used to just blank out whenever I would become fearful or intimidated. Sometimes not allowing me to see or hear what was happening in front of me for a period of time. Trauma. Why I couldn't seem to sleep at night. Trauma. Why I couldn't trust in relationships, always looking for the exit. Trauma. Why I lived in such a state of panic and hypervigilance, never being able to just relax. The dots were starting to connect. The time that I worked with my therapist was absolutely life-changing, to say the least. It was as though I was set on a road towards self-compassion.